Hello, everybody, and happy March 31st, the end of the longest month of our lives. I hope you are all staying safe, staying healthy, and staying home. The sooner that we really lock out the contact with others and lock out the ability for this virus to transmit, the sooner we can go back to our lives and being able to see the people that we want to see. And I miss you all, and I hope you're doing well, and I hope you have been enjoying this book. We're coming into the last stretch of this book. You'll be finishing it up this week. So I just wanted to give a little brief overview on the notes that we will be taking. So I have the notes the chapters toward the end here broken up into two big chunks. And so this chart you're going to fill out and add to for these chapters. So these stories represent Kiowa's death cycle story. So while we as readers have heard about other deaths, the deaths of Kurt Lemon and Lavender, and we hear about those more than once, they cycle back through. No death seems to impact the story and perhaps Tim O'Brien more than Kiowa's. As you read these chapters, add your thoughts to this chart. Try and find at least 3 pieces of text evidence. So quotes or paraphrase, similar to what we did that first time around for each of the story elements. So the first one is the lake, or in general water, as metaphor. So if we think of water metaphorically and kind of what it represents in our lives and what we've seen it represent in songs or movies or other books, it frequently represents things like rebirth or baptism or cleansing. Sometimes it can represent death. Many cultures around the world bury their dead in water. And so as you are seeing this mention of the lake, mention of water throughout these chapters, think about what it represents to Tim O'Brien, what it represents to the story, what it represents to the other characters, the other people in the platoon. And then some sort of response. What does it make you think? What connection are you making there? What does it make you know or understand about the characters, and or war? We also start, Tim O'Brien is in real life a writer, and in the story he presents himself, the character Tim O'Brien is a writer as well. And he talks a little bit about the purpose of storytelling and what telling these stories mean to him, what being a writer means to him. So try and find a few of those quotes where he addresses storytelling directly. We are a storytelling animal. It maybe is one of the things that really sets us apart from other animals, is we like to tell our story. We've been doing it since the dawn of time for humans, really. A reason that we love things like cave drawings is it's very much a storytelling from the beginning. Sitting around campfires, storytelling. So what role does Tim O'Brien think storytelling plays in his life, in the life of these characters? And what does that let you know, think, believe about O'Brien, the stories, the war? Listening and talking. There's quite a bit of dialogue in these chapters. So just kind of pay attention to who's doing the listening, who's doing the talking. Pay attention to the dialogue too. What's going on when a character is clearly not listening to another character? You see some of that with Azar and Rat Kiley so kind of pay attention to that piece. It plays in a little bit with the storytelling. Storytelling is very much about talking and listening. And if your audience is not listening, some of the men in this section seem to stop being able to hear. They become almost blinded by their purpose, by their own perception of what's going on. And we've seen throughout the story how the different characters in the platoon have their own perception, their own reality of the war itself. And none is more valid or less valid than any of the others. They're just different. And that's important for Tim O'Brien to share with us. And I do think it reveals something about the war itself and about the reality of being a soldier. We also see some evidence of PTSD and trauma. So where are you starting to see that? The horrors of war, where are you starting to see that? There's some very clear horrors of war, just in everyday battle and injuries and things like that. I believe it's this section where Tim O'Brien is shot, although it might actually be the next section. But we see some cruelty from the members of O'Brien's platoon. That, to me at least, is one of the greatest horrors of war. If you had me last trimester when we read Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass, it's a slave narrative for those people who did not have me. One of the things that Frederick Douglass talks about is how slavery was as harmful to the slave who is being directly abused as it was to the slave master, who he felt like was being emotionally abused, that the system of slavery turned the slaveholder, who may have been a fine person, into somebody quite cruel. So we see that same thing happen to some of the soldiers that we know, some of the soldiers in O'Brien's platoon. So that might be one of the horrors of war. That's one of the horrors of war that stands out to me in this section. But of course, recording your thoughts, what you're seeing. And then friendship and fraternity. The platoon we have seen since the second and third chapters, this reliance on each other, this soldiers' fraternity that is so valuable. They rely on each other. They love each other. They have complicated relationships with each other because of what they're going through. They are a sort of family. And then you have a question for this section about this death cycle. And then finally, these last few chapters start to conclude the book. And they bring some of the stories full circle. So this book is interesting in that each chapter, of course, can kind of exist all on its own. And in fact, some chapters have been pulled for anthologies. I think most famously on Rainy River. So you don't have to necessarily read the whole book to get a sense of some of these stories. But by reading the whole book, we see some of it come full circle. We see some of the big changes in characters, including Tim. And we learn more about Tim's view on storytelling. So how have these characters changed in the book? What does this reveal about the character? What does this reveal about war? You may want to reference your chapter notes 1 as you finish this. I'm almost done with grading them and I'm bouncing them back. So if you haven't gotten it back yet, you will by the time you get to this section. I'm hoping to finish those today. Azar is one that we didn't really focus on at the very beginning, but he's become more prominent in the second half of the book. And so you can just note, what you see from him. And then responding, some well-developed paragraphs. High school juniors should be 5 to 7 sentences. That's pretty much a well-developed paragraph that is a standalone paragraph. So consider that. Okay. Shooting for these being due on Friday. Turn in your chapter notes 2 today. And I think that's it for now. Email me if you have any questions. And stay safe and enjoy the rest of the book. Take care, everybody.